Hello and hello everyone, welcome to class 12 biology. With this video we are going to start a new unit from your biology syllabus, that is unit 10 ecology. In this unit you have got two chapters to prepare, that is chapter number 13 organisms and populations and chapter number 15 biodiversity and conservation. Right. Now remember, chapter number 14 and chapter number 16 of unit ecology have been removed in your revised CBSE syllabus for this particular year because of pandemic situation. Right. And those chapters, they won't appear in your board examination for sure, but I'm not sure whether they're going to ask questions from those chapters in your upcoming medical entrance examinations like NEET exam. If you're preparing for NEET exam, it'll be safe for you if you prepare those chapters on your own in your spare time. Okay. For this unit you have got only two chapters in your for your board examination. For this particular unit we have got only two chapters to prepare. These are the two chapters, and these two chapters, they will carry 12 marks in total. So we will start with chapter number 13, organisms and populations. But before we start with the chapter, let us try to understand what do we mean by ecology. So what is the definition of ecology? Ecology is defined as the branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical surroundings. So that is the definition of ecology. Right. And ecology is basically concerned with four levels of biological organization. They are organisms, population, communities, and biomes. If you look at biological organization, these are the levels of biological organization. It starts with atom, molecule, organelle, cell, tissue, organ system, organism, population, community, ecosystem, biome, and biosphere. So these are the levels of biological organization. It starts with simple and ends up it getting complex, more complex, and this biosphere, you can think about the entire earth as a biosphere which consists of many different biomes, and each biome consists of many different ecosystems. Each ecosystem consists of many different communities. Each community consists of many populations, and each population consists of many organisms. Right. Now the branch of biology which deals with the study of organisms, populations, community, ecosystem, biome, biosphere, that is called as ecology. So I hope you are clear regarding the definition of ecology. And now we can start with the chapter number 13, organisms and populations, which are nothing but the two levels of ecology in the biological organization. Right. So organisms and populations, that is our chapter number 13. When we talk about organisms and populations, first we have to talk about organisms. And when we talk about an organism, let's say we have a lizard like a chameleon over here. A chameleon, in its environment, it cannot exist independently. It has to constantly interact with its physical surroundings, right, which can be biotic or abiotic. So what do we mean by biotic and abiotic factors? Right? Biotic and abiotic factors, they are nothing but non-living and living factors. Biotic means living factors and abiotic means non-living factors. So first let us take a look at abiotic factors. Abiotic factors, or physico-chemical components of the environment in which an organism lives, they include temperature, water, light, and soil. So these are important abiotic factors. They are non-living factors with which an organism has to constantly interact with. Okay, so variations in these factors result in various habitats of the organism. Okay, and the second factor is biotic factors. They are the living factors, right? A chameleon, it has to interact with the living component of its environment as well. It can be predator, it can be pathogen, okay, it can be parasites, or it can be other chameleons as competitors. So biotic factors include pathogens, parasites, predators, and competitors. So instead of chameleon, you can take an example of ourselves, a human being. A human being also has to interact with biotic and abiotic factors in its environment, right? So temperature, water, light, soil, these are the factors that influence us as well. We have to interact with these abiotic factors. We have to also interact with biotic factors like pathogens, parasites. We have to interact with with mosquitoes, right? Mosquitoes are like parasites. So if we live in a jungle, we have to interact with predators as well. And in a community, we have to live with other human beings. So other human beings can be like competitors for us. Okay, so these are the two factors with which an organism consistently interacts with. Okay, so now when we talk about organism and it lives and its environment, right, we are talking about the organismic level of ecology. And organismic level of ecology is nothing but the physiological ecology of the organism. That is how an organism is adapted to its environment, how organisms are adapted to their environments. That is the organismic level of ecology. Right. Now, variations in temperature, right? The variations in temperature, seasons, precipitation of the environment results in the formation of major biomes within a biosphere. Right. So temperature, seasons, precipitation like rainfall and snowfall, they are abiotic factors in the environment in which an organism lives, right? So variations in these abiotic factors result in the formation of different kinds of biomes such as desert, rainforest, tundra, etc. Okay, so this particular graph is given in your textbook. You have to study this particular graph and you have to understand clearly. In simple words, I can explain over here. Arctic and alpine tundra. So this is a biome. It's a major biome. And what is the characteristic of such a major biome is it has got a very low mean annual precipitation, less than 50, around 50. Okay, and the temperature, the mean annual temperature is also very low. It is in negatives, right? -5, -10 degrees centigrades. Okay, so a biome in which these two factors, the temperature and annual precipitation, is very low, it is called as Arctic or alpine tundra. If you look at tropical rainforest, it is a biome in which there is a very large amount of annual precipitation, very large amount of rain, and also the temperature is also very high. The mean annual temperature also remains very high. So such a biome is called as tropical rainforest or tropical forest. So other things you can infer from these two information, right? Now these are all major biomes that are present within the biosphere. Okay, so each biome may consist of variety of habitats. So biome is a broader term, right? Within a biome there can be many habitats, right? Now let's try to understand what do we mean by biome, habitat, and niche, right? There is another word also called as niche. You have to understand this one as well. A biome, so I have copied these definitions from Wikipedia. You can refer to Wikipedia as well, right? A biome is defined as a community of plants and animals that have common characteristics for the environment they exist in, right? So a community of plant and animals, they have got common characteristics for the environment they exist in. Because they're existing in the same environment, same kind of environment, they have got common characteristics. These plants and animals, they have got common characteristics. For example, animals living in a desert, they will have common characteristics even if the desert is in Africa or Asia or anywhere. Okay, so biome. Okay, so biome is a very broad term. It is a broader term which is much larger. It is a very broader term than habitat. And biome, any biome can comprise of variety of habitats. What do you mean by habitat? Habitat is a type of natural environment in which a particular species of organism lives. So it is a simple definition. A species habitat is those places where the species can find food, shelter, protection, and mates for reproduction. The habitat is the place where the species survives, right? It finds food, shelter, protection, and it finds mates for reproduction as well. And it is characterized by both physical and biological features that we discussed about, right? And an organism has to constantly interact with its biotic and abiotic factors. That's what it means over here. And now what do you mean by niche? Right? And what's the difference between habitat and niche? Niche of an organism is the match of a species to its specific environmental condition, right? So an organism like a scorpion, what is the niche of that particular scorpion, right? The habitat of that scorpion can be a forest floor underneath a boulder, right? But when we talk about niche, we are talking about the function of the scorpion in that particular system, in that particular location, right? It describes the functional role of an organism in the ecological system. So we are talking about the function of that particular scorpion, a function of a particular centipede or a millipede. Okay, so niche means it is the match of a species to a specific environment, how it adapts itself to survive in that particular location, in that particular habitat. How does it manage its resources, how it interacts with other organisms in that particular ecosystem, right? And it also describes the functional role of the organism in the ecological system. So these are the important terms that you should remember: biome, habitat, and niche. So the main thing to understand over here is the difference between habitat and niche. Okay, so it is pronounced niche. Okay, you can say it anyway, but you have to remember the spelling of this one. Okay. So now let us discuss about some major abiotic factors. And one very important abiotic factor is temperature. And we all know that the temperature, it varies from place to place and from time to time. Right? We have got seasonal variations in temperature. During summer months, the temperature can be very high. During winter months, the temperature can be very low. So that is seasonal variations in temperature. We also have got latitudinal variations in temperature, which means as we move away from the equator towards the North Pole and South Pole, the temperature, it gradually decreases. Right? At the equator region, the temperature can go above 50 degrees Celsius in deserts, right? And at the polar regions, the North Pole and South Pole, the temperature can go below 0 degrees centigrade into negatives. And then we have got altitudinal variations in temperature, which means as we move towards the mountaintop, right? As we move towards the mountaintop, towards higher altitudes, the temperature decreases. At the plain, the temperature is high, and as we move towards the mountaintop, towards the higher altitude, the temperature can decrease. Now, apart from these temperature variations, we also have got special unique zones where the temperature can go above 100 degrees Celsius. For example, we have got hot thermal springs, or we also have got deep sea hydrothermal vents where the temperature can go around 100 degrees Celsius. Right. So these variations in temperature, it creates different thermal zones. Right. And in these thermal zones, we find different organisms. Now the question is, why are there different organisms found in different thermal zones? For example, why is snow leopard found in high altitude areas where the temperature is low? Why is snow leopard not found in hot tropical jungles in the plain? Right. Answer lies in the effect of temperature on the enzyme kinematics of the organism, and therefore the basal metabolism of the organism. Remember, when you studied about enzyme in your class 11 biomolecules chapter, we studied that enzymes, they can function optimally at their optimum temperature. So temperature has got major effect on the functioning of the enzyme. Right? High temperature and low temperature can affect the temperature affect the enzyme activity negatively, right? In a negative manner. So temperature affects the enzyme kinematics and therefore the basal metabolism of the organism. So organisms, they have got different temperature tolerance. Now, based upon the tolerance of the organism towards the temperature, we have got two different types of organisms. They are eurythermal organisms and stenothermal organisms. Eurythermal organisms are those organisms who can tolerate wide range of temperatures, those organisms who can survive in a very wide range of temperatures. And then we have got stenothermal organisms, those who are restricted to a very narrow range of temperatures. Right? Stenothermal organisms are very sensitive to temperature change. Right? They can die if the temperature changes a little bit. So they are stenothermal organisms. Now, based upon this particular concept, you have to find some examples of eurythermal organisms and some examples of stenothermal organisms. You can take the example of human beings. Are human beings eurythermal or stenothermal? Right. You should also try to find answer for how will global warming affect the distributional range of some species. Right? How the global warming, which is happening right in this particular era, how will global warming affect the distribution range of some species of organisms? Okay, so that is about the temperature. Another important abiotic factor is water. Life is not possible on the earth without water. Life on earth originated in water and it continues to be sustained by water. Okay, and desert organisms which can survive in limited water availability in the desert, they have got special adaptations to survive in the desert environment. Okay, and aquatic organisms, right, those organisms which live inside the water, they are affected by the quality of water. For example, the chemical composition and pH of water. We can take the example of salt concentration in the water and how it affects the organisms. Right. So when we look at the salt concentration in water, the salinity of inland water is less than 5 parts per thousand. PPT stands for parts per thousand. And the salinity of seawater is approximately 30 to 35 ppt. And in hypersaline lagoons, the salinity is above 100 parts per thousand. Right. Now, different organisms, they have got different tolerance to the salt concentration. We have got organisms such as Euryhaline organisms, those organisms who can tolerate a wide range of salinities, just like eurythermal organisms who can survive in a wide range of temperature. Euryhaline organisms are those aquatic organisms who can survive in a wide range of salinities. And then we have got Stenohaline organisms, those organisms which are restricted to narrow range of salinity. Just like stenothermal organisms, we have got Stenohaline organisms, those aquatic organisms which are restricted to very narrow range of salinity. For example, goldfish is a Stenohaline organism, right? Why? Because if you put the goldfish in a seawater, it will immediately die. Whereas a salmon fish, it is a Euryhaline fish. It is a Euryhaline organism because at one particular season, the salmon, it moves from seawater to the fresh water to lay eggs. And you might have seen National Geographic documentaries where the fish, they swim up the river, right? So these salmon fish, they move from seawater to fresh water to lay eggs, right? And when the eggs hatch, right, their hatchlings, they will move from the fresh water to the seawater, which means these salmon fishes, they are Euryhaline. They can tolerate wide range of salinities. Now the question for you is, how will the salinity of water affect the aquatic organisms? The hint is it has got something to do with osmosis. Okay. Another important abiotic factor is light. Right? We all know that light is important for photosynthesis, and therefore it is an important factor for all the organisms, especially autotrophs. Right? We can safely say that the energy source of the ecosystem, or the entire ecosystem, it is the sunlight. Right? Because photosynthesis, it converts the sunlight energy into chemical energy, and that chemical energy is passed down the food chain, right? Thereby driving the ecosystem. Right? So light is an important factor for not just the autotrophs but for the entire ecosystem. Now some plants, they grow well in low light conditions, such as small plants like herbs and shrubs growing in the forest floor. So these plants, since they have to grow under the shadow of tall trees, they have adapted themselves to grow well in low light conditions. Right? So apart from that, the effect of light on plants, it includes photoperiodism. What does photoperiodism mean? It means the duration of available light and its effects on the flowering of the plants. So how does a plant know when to flower? Right? So the plant, it takes cues from the duration of available light. So to flower or not to flower, it takes cue from the duration of available light during day and night. That is called as photoperiodism. Now the light has got also effects on behavior of animals. Right? So diurnal, which means daily changes, and seasonal variations in light intensity, it affects animal behaviors such as foraging, reproductive and migratory activities. You know reproductive and migratory activities, right? Now foraging means the behavior of finding food, right? That is called as foraging, right? So diurnal and seasonal variations in light intensity affects the animal behaviors such as foraging, reproductive and migratory activities. And the spectral quality of solar radiation, it is also important for organisms. It also becomes an important factor for organisms because UV rays, right? If the solar radiation contains lots of UV rays, it becomes harmful for many organisms. And you all know that UV rays, it can burn our skin. It can cause skin cancer as well, right? And UV rays, they can instantly kill bacteria, some bacteria. Right? So UV rays is harmful for many organisms. So spectral quality of solar radiation is also an important factor for organisms within the ecosystem. Okay. Now there are two questions given in your textbook. You have to find answers for that. It is very important. What is the source for energy for deep sea organisms? So those organisms which live in deep seas where the sunlight cannot reach, right? What is the source of energy? On the land, the entire ecosystem is driven by the energy received from the sunlight, right? But what about in the deep sea where the sunlight cannot reach, where the sunlight cannot penetrate? Right? What is the source of energy for those organisms? And then another question is, among red, green, and brown algae, right, of the sea, which is likely to be found in the deepest water and why? So these are the two questions for which you have to find answers. And this is about the light as an abiotic factor. So the fourth and the final important abiotic factor given in your textbook is soil. So you must have studied about soil in your lower classes in other subjects, right? You must have studied about different types of soil such as loamy soil, sandy soil, right? Clay soil, etc. And those soils, they have got different qualities, they have got different characteristics, right? The quality of the soil, it is affected by climate, weathering process, and soil development process. Okay, and the characteristics of the soil which is found in the area determines the vegetation which grows in that particular area, and it indirectly determines the animals which is found in that particular area, because the vegetation of that area will determine what kind of animals will be supported in that particular area, right? So soil characteristics becomes an important factor in the composition of plants as well as animals of that particular area. So what are those soil characteristics? We have got certain soil characteristics such as percolation rate, water holding capacity, soil pH, mineral composition, right? So these are soil characteristics. Now, percolation rate and water holding capacity of the soil depends upon the grain size of the soil. For example, sandy soil, they have got large grain sizes, so therefore their percolation rate is high and water holding capacity is low, and therefore sandy soil, they cannot support vegetation growth. Whereas loamy soil and clayey soil, their percolation rate is low and water holding capacity is high, therefore they can support good vegetation growth, right? So the vegetation of an area is determined by the soil characteristics, and apart from that, the soil pH and the mineral composition will also affect the growth of vegetation in that particular area, right? So that is about the soil, which is important abiotic factor. And remember, based upon percolation rate and water holding capacity, we have got one experiment in our practical syllabus as well. Okay, for the next video, we will be discussing about the responses of an organism, the responses of organisms towards these abiotic factors. So please read about the responses to abiotic factors, and you can watch the next video. Thank you.